Tonight on the Worldview Report, 2 Chinese nationals are charged with smuggling a dangerous pathogen into the United States, claiming it was for the purpose of studying at the University of Michigan. Another biotech company has joined the race to normalize implantable brain chips. And MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell goes on trial in a defamation suit brought against him by a former employee of Dominion voting machines. President Trump's big, beautiful bill comes under fierce criticism, not just from the Democrats, but from members of his own party. And now the ranks of the opposition include his one-time close aide, Elon Musk. And after Ukraine's successful drone strike against Russian bombers, some are asking the question, what about America's military aircraft? Are they just as vulnerable? All these stories and more as the Worldview Report begins right now.
This is Worldview Report with host Brandon House. Whether it is news from the nation's capital or your state capital, from the classroom to the boardroom, from national security to national and local news that impacts you and your family, Worldview Report is your trusted source for vital and uncensored news. And now, here is Brandon House.
Good evening and welcome to the Worldview Report. I'm Brandon House. Leading off tonight, 2 Chinese nationals were charged in Michigan on Tuesday with allegedly smuggling a dangerous pathogen into the United States. They claim that it was for the purposes of studying at the University of Michigan. United States Attorney Jerome Gorgon Jr. reports that one of the individuals is 33 years of age. Another is 34. Both citizens of communist China. They were charged with conspiracy, smuggling goods into the United States, and false statements, as well as visa fraud. According to the complaint, one of them allegedly lied, but later admitted to smuggling a dangerous fungus into America through the Detroit Metropolitan Airport so that they could conduct research, with his girlfriend at a laboratory at the University of Michigan. The fungus, it is the most significant and destructive disease affecting wheat crops all over the world. That's according to the National Library of Medicine. The scientific literature classifies it as a potential biological weapon. According to the FBI, the complaint reports that one of them received Chinese government funding for their work on this pathogen back in China. The complaint also alleges that electronics have information about their loyalty to the Chinese Communist Party. The female that was arrested, along with her boyfriend, it's now come out that her boyfriend also researches the same pathogen at a Chinese university. Gorgon, the U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Michigan, said in a press release, quote, the alleged actions of these Chinese nationals, including a loyal member of the Chinese Communist Party, are of the gravest national security concerns. These 2 aliens have been charged with smuggling a fungus that has been described as a potential agroterrorism weapon into the heartland of America, where they apparently intended to use a University of Michigan laboratory to further their scheme, end quote. He said the criminal charges against the 2 Chinese nationals are indicative of U.S. Customs and Border Protection's critical role in protecting the American people, quote, from biological threats that could devastate our agricultural economy and cause harm to humans, especially when it involves a researcher from a major university attempting to clandestinely bring potentially harmful biological materials into the United States, end quote. As we previously reported, Mohammed Salam, a 45-year-old Egyptian national residing illegally in the United States, attacked a pro-Israel demonstration in Boulder, Colorado. That was on Sunday, June 1st. 12 people were injured with Molotov cocktails that were heaved from a makeshift flamethrower. The FBI immediately labeled the attack an act of terrorism. Salman was shouting "Free Palestine" as he attacked the families and children. He was charged with attempted murder. Salman entered the U.S. in 2022 and that was during the Biden regime, but was illegal at the time of the alleged crime due to an expired visa. President Trump blames Biden's open border policy for the barbaric attack on the Jewish families. On Tuesday, ICE, they took Solomon's wife and child or children, according to different press reports, into custody for questioning. It remains unclear what is the status, the immigration status of the family members, and whether the whole family was taken into custody. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem released a video on Tuesday about the detainment of his family. Watch this.
Hi, everyone. I'm Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Today, the Department of Homeland Security and ICE are taking the family of suspected Boulder, Colorado terrorist and illegal alien Mohammed Solomon into ICE custody. Now, Mohammed's despicable actions will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But we're also investigating to what extent his family knew about this horrific attack, if they had any knowledge of it, or if they provided support to it. I am continuing to pray for the victims of this attack and for all of their families. Our thoughts and our prayers go out to all of them, and I want them to know that justice will be served.
Just the News reports that the defamation trial against MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell, brought by a former Dominion Voting Systems employee, began in Denver with opening statements on yesterday. Former Dominion executive Eric Coomer, who had handled security for the voting systems company, sued Mr. Lindell for defamation back in 2022. Local NBC News affiliate 9 News reported. The trial is scheduled to run through June 10th. Jury selection was completed on Monday with the 8-person jury seated at around 3 p.m. local time. In a court filing, Coomer's attorneys argued, quote, after more than 15 years as a respected professional at the top of his field, Dr. Coomer's reputation has been irreparably tarnished, end quote. As a result, he, quote, now endures frequent credible death threats and the burden of being made the face of a imagined criminal conspiracy of unprecedented scope in American history, end quote. Mr. Lindell, outside the court on Monday, said, quote, we're in a battle of biblical proportions of evil and good, end quote. He is expected to take the stand in the coming days. We'll keep you posted. Ukraine's coordinated drone attack on Russian targets this past weekend raises questions about the U.S. military's ability to protect itself from a similar attack, particularly after mysterious drones were sighted in New Jersey and other states last year. Lieutenant General Richard Newton, who is the former U.S. Air Force Assistant Vice Chief of Staff, says the current defense system that the U.S. is supposed to have to protect us from attacks, well, it's lacking in its technologies that are continuing to evolve. Newton characterized Ukraine's use of 117 drones to attack 40 Russian bombers as extraordinary. That's what he said the mission was, extraordinary. And it was executed with military and intelligence-based precision, having been planned for more than a year. Newton said aspects of the operation provide a blueprint for American military defense officials as they continue to strategize for possible future military attacks from adversaries such as Russia and China that will likely involve drones and an array of nuclear missiles. Newton told News Nation, quote, it's something we've got to be worried about, end quote. Well, ironically, it was Russia's adherence to nuclear treaties with the United States that left its fleet of bombers out in the open and vulnerable. One of the requirements of the SALT and START treaties is that the nuclear-armed planes must be left unhidden, visible, in other words, to the other side via satellite imagery. Ukraine took advantage of that requirement. So do not think that Iran or China would not do the same to the United States. News Nation also reports that Steve Bannon doubled down on his criticism of Senator Lindsey Graham, that was on Monday, saying that the senator from South Carolina should not be let back into the United States or be put in jail if he is allowed to return home. Bannon criticized Graham on News Nation's Chris Cuomo show for what he believes is a deliberate attempt by the senator to escalate tensions between Ukraine and Russia. The host of Bannon's War Room claimed both Ukraine and Graham's actions are sucking the United States into another war, one that could escalate to global conflict. Steve Bannon said, quote, "Two things ought to happen. Either cancel his passport and don't let him back in the country, or put him in jail if he comes back. Lindsey Graham is stirring it up right now, and people better wake up to the fact that we're getting sucked into this war. And if we get sucked in much more, it's going to be tough to get out," end quote. Chris Cuomo disagreed, saying Graham's behavior doesn't warrant such measures. Quote, "I'm just saying you can't be throwing people in jail because you don't like what they say. That's my only point. I'm not saying that you're wrong about where this might lead and how dangerous it is. And that's why I wanted you on to discuss it," end quote. Watch this.
I don't understand how you could want to jail a U.S. senator because he's saying something you don't like.
Because
that sounds like the worst of the deep state.
No, it's absolutely what he's doing over there right now is stirring it up. He's giving the Ukrainians,
but it's not illegal.
He's giving Ukrainians false hope. He's giving Ukrainians false hope that we're there to support them on engaging Russia in a kinetic conflict, and we are not. President Trump,
right, so
one of the central parts of President Trump. Hey,
so maybe he's wrong, but what do you say? Throw him in jail.
Two things ought to happen. Either cancel his passport and don't let him back in the country, or put him in jail if he comes back. Lindsey Graham is stirring it up right now. And people better wake up to the fact that we're getting sucked into this war.
Graham recently visited Kiev with Democrat Senator Richard Blumenthal, and he spoke with Ukrainian President Zelensky. That was part of a $1 million taxpayer-funded trip that I think was used as propaganda fodder for Ukrainian interests and globalists that are hoping to keep the war going. That's if we're being completely honest, because we know they want to not only keep it going, but I think expand it beyond the borders of Russia and Ukraine. Graham said he expects the sanctions bill that would put, strict tariffs on Moscow will move forward. Quote, "There are House members that are ready to move in the House, and you will see congressional action," end quote. President Trump has not endorsed the bill as of Tuesday, and Steve Bannon, has reportedly accused Graham of working behind the president's back. The wine press reports that another biotech company has joined the race to normalize implantable brain chips. The Austin, Texas-based neurotech startup Paradomics recently announced the successful completion of its first implant in a patient. That was in May, rivaling Elon Musk and his Neuralink and other competitors. The company's device is called Connexus. It's a device that's implanted in the brain that is roughly the size of a U.S. penny. According to the company's website, the device works in 4 steps. A neurosurgeon places the Connexus system under the skin. The surgeon uses well-developed techniques that are common in other healthcare applications. The microelectrodes of the cortical module, they extend just below the brain's surface to gather rich signals from the individual's neurons in the motor cortex. This data is sent along a thin, flexible lead to a transceiver in the chest. This disc-shaped transceiver wirelessly transmits data by a secure optical link to a second transceiver worn by the user. The second transceiver powers the system through inductive charging, similar to wireless charging for smartphones. The data is then sent to a small computer loaded with advanced language models and AI. Software analyzes the user's brain data to figure out what they intend to say or do and translates it into text on a screen or synthesized speech, or it enables control of digital devices. Cryptopolitan reported that, quote, "The procedure took place on May 14th at the University of Michigan with a patient who was already undergoing neurosurgery for epilepsy treatment. Paradomics demonstrated that its device could be safely implanted to record neutral activity. The company plans to kick off a clinical trial later this year once regulators give its system the green light. The study will examine this technology's long-term safety and use in humans," end quote. Dr. Matthew Wilsey, he's assistant professor of neurology and biomedical engineering at the University of Michigan. He said, quote, "It's absolutely thrilling. It's motivating. And this is the kind of thing that helps me get up in the morning and go to work," end quote. The company received investment funds from Saudi Arabia's Gnome project. We'll be right back after this short break. Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview. Welcome back from the break. Thank you for being with us tonight and every night, and for remembering we are brought to you by you. One way you can help us keep this program going and be available to everyone to watch free of charge is through one of our biggest sponsors. That's our foundation, worldviewfoundation.com. Think of us as your Christian worldview alternative to National Public Radio, National Public Television. Our foundation is a Christian worldview organization that sponsors our Sunday night church service. Remember, I'm teaching through the book of Revelation on Sunday nights. This Sunday night, I'll start with Revelation chapter 17, verse 1. That's at worldviewtube.com on Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern. And if you can't join us on Sunday nights, well, we put it up online the next day for anyone and everyone to watch again, free of charge. So how is it we're pushing out so much educational and ministry programming absolutely free? And we pay for the bandwidth bill, which is, I think, somewhere around $8,000 with the bandwidth bill and the storage of the digital files. And then we give you free apps for Android, for iPhone, Roku channels. All those streaming platforms are free. How do we do it? Well, it's really with your sponsorship. And one way is through our foundation, worldviewfoundation.com. Don't forget, you'll find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. Worldviewfoundation.com. President Trump unleashed a furious verbal assault on Senator Rand Paul for opposing his big, beautiful budget bill, which passed the House and is now up for consideration in the Senate. In a series of Truth Social posts, President Trump blasted the Kentucky Republican as a contrarian, saying Paul votes, quote, no on everything, end quote. And then he wrote, quote, Rand Paul has very little understanding of the BBB, especially the tremendous growth that is coming. He loves voting no on everything. He thinks it's good politics, but it's not the BBB is a big winner. Rand votes no on everything, but never has any practical or constructive ideas. His ideas are actually crazy, losers. The people of Kentucky can't stand him. This is a big growth bill, end quote. Rand Paul is among a handful of Senate Republicans who have expressed opposition to the bill, which would implement Trump's tax, defense, and energy initiatives, along with artificial intelligence and a host of wasteful pork spending programs. Senator Paul said Sunday on CBS News' Face the Nation that the bill has, quote, a lot of extra money, end quote, going toward, quote, padding the military budget, end quote, and funds additionally for security, when, quote, the president has essentially stopped the border flow without any new money and without any legislation, end quote. Paul said his red line is a provision in the legislation that would raise the debt ceiling. The House version of the bill included a $4 trillion debt ceiling hike, while the Senate's budget, that blueprint, contained a $5 trillion increase. He's called for removing the debt ceiling provision from the bill and voting on the issue separately. Senator Paul told CBS News, quote, if I vote for the $5 trillion debt, who's left in Washington that cares about the debt? The GOP will own the debt once they vote for this, end quote. Senator Rand Paul is not the only one criticizing President Trump's big, beautiful bill from the Republican side. None other than Trump ally Elon Musk is also blasting the bill as a betrayal of Republican values. Musk offered his harshest rebuke yet of Trump's signature tax spending bill, saying it is not so much big and beautiful as it is a, quote, disgusting abomination, end quote. Musk said, quote, shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong, end quote. He said in one of more than 10 posts or reposts on the subject on Tuesday, adding another point, quote, next year, we fire all politicians who betrayed the American people, end quote. Musk and other tech leaders have spoken out against the bill in recent days. But the new wave of commentary from the world's richest man, well, it was a clear escalation, and it earned quick endorsements from a number of fiscal conservatives on Capitol Hill. Representative Thomas Massie of Kentucky, one of at least 3 Republican lawmakers who quickly affirmed Musk's comments on X. He wrote, quote, he's right, end quote. Musk responded to Massie, who voted against the bill when it recently advanced in the House of Representatives, calling it, quote, simple math, end quote. Well, now it's time for our nightly Worldview Report commentary. For the second straight year, major corporations have been pulling back on LGBTQ Pride Month sponsorships, with many eliminating the themed merchandise altogether. A recent survey from Gravity Research polled more than 200 corporate executives and showed that 39% of the companies plan to scale back on Pride Month celebrations this year, including sponsorship of Pride events, posting supportive messages on social media, or selling Pride-themed merchandise. CNN noted, quote, consumer brands are wary of provoking right-wing customers and activists, and they fear reprisals from President Donald Trump's administration. Federal agencies have threatened to investigate companies with diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, end quote. Luke Hartig, the president of Gravity Research, said that the Trump administration and its supporters are driving the change behind the sudden shift in corporate sponsorship of so-called Pride Month. He added that, quote, companies are under increasing pressure not to engage and speak out on issues, end quote. Eric Bloom, the vice president of corporate citizenship at the Human Rights Campaign Foundation, he decried the changing landscape and said that companies are, quote, losing trust and credibility, end quote, with the LGBTQ community. Never mind that they were losing, well, the credibility of 90% of us Americans who don't like seeing this filth, this cultural Marxism in our stores. and are actually offended by it. But I guess we don't count in the eyes of those folks, right? It's just the maybe 10% who tilt that way or feel a sense of virtue in somehow supporting it. Activists immediately noticed this week that the retail chain Target, well, they've drastically rolled back their Pride Month merchandise and marketing of said merchandise. And that was, of course, after the company faced significant backlash from conservative consumers in the last few years. The pro-LGBTQ site Boing Boing, well, they lamented in a recent article, quote, "The managers running Target made a show of ditching its diversity and inclusion programs to please Donald Trump," end quote. Well, they're wrong again. This isn't being done to please President Trump. It's to stop offending the majority of their customers. President Trump may be used as, well, the excuse, and he may have used his bully pulpit to bring the issue to the fore, but he was just the biggest voice in the room. And he was just reflecting how, well, I think tens of millions of us feel whenever we walk into a store and see this insane cultural rot shoved in our faces and that of our children and grandchildren. Yes, President Trump deserves some of the credit. Thank you, Mr. Trump, for bringing this to the forefront. But it's the millions of us who took action by eliminating Target and other stores from our lists of family-friendly merchants, well, that we do business with. And this, of course, affected the long overdue change in their corporate behavior. And that's, in part, what the free market system is all about. Voting with your dollars till you get what you want. And I guess Target and others heard the voice of a lot of Americans. That does it for this edition of the Worldview Report. Again, if you appreciate this broadcast, and where are you going to get news like this? It takes a team of about 7 of us, about 15 man-hours a day to put it all together, to collect all this great news and footage and information. That is not done cheaply. And yet here we are pushing it all out for free. And we let other networks pick it up for free. So if you appreciate our broadcast ministry, will you please support what we're doing? WorldviewFoundation.com is one way you can do that. WorldviewFoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail, and I hope you do. You'll also find our phone number there if you prefer to make a contribution over the phone. You can simply leave a voicemail for Melissa or text her at that number on the website, worldviewfoundation.com. She'll get back to you and help you make that contribution over the phone. If you do make a contribution to our foundation, we send out about the first week of each February tax receipts with our tax ID number for you to have for your taxes. So there you go. WorldviewFoundation.com. Don't forget our foundation also sponsors our Sunday night church service each Sunday night, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard at worldviewtube.com. So next time, I'm Brandon House. May God save America. Take care.